Welcome back to The Edge. Google hypes AI overviews, but refuses to answer the CTR question. ChatGPT leads the AI search race while Google and others are slipping. The U.S. Copyright Office cites legal risk at every stage of generative AI. And you're listening to all things Meta, Pinterest, TikTok, and the like. Social news from The Edge for the week of May 12th, 2025, here on Edge of the Web Radio.
From the Edge of the Web studios, here's what we're looking at this week.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good night. Anywhere you are. Hey, thanks for listening to Edge of the Web Radio. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. If you haven't come across that yet, go over to YouTube because we also throw a lot of screens on the show as we're recording. This is Edge of the Web Radio. I'm your host, Erin Sparks, owner of Cites Strategics, a local Indianapolis-based digital marketing firm. We're covering SEO and digital marketing news separately from our interview series, making sure that you get news to your desk as quickly as possible each and every week. Check out all the recent shows over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. This show is, title sponsor of the show is Cites Strategics. Again, hey, somebody's in here. My gosh, hey, we got Duncan Alney. Duncan, how are you doing, sir?
Who can it be now? I'm really good, Erin. It's good to be back with you, man. I love coming to see you, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us here. We're going to be diving into social media news. I do have to give a throw to the title sponsor because they keep the lights on here at Cites Strategics. We want to make sure that you guys know we're one of the top SEO firms here in the Midwest. We're consummate learners. That's why we do this show, do the show with Duncan as well, so I can learn more about social media. But if you're interested in what we do, just give us a shout. Go over to CitesStrategics.com and happy to give you an hour free consultation to be able to understand where you are in your digital ecosystem. All right, this is Duncan Alney. He's the founder of Firebelly Marketing. Tell me what's going on in your life here.
Firebelly Marketing, baby.
Yeah.
He's a Cubs fan and a Chicago man. I'm just kidding. I'm good. I'm ready for the summer, Erin. I'm happy to see you.
Roger that.
I'm excited about our show today.
Yeah, absolutely. We get a lot of interesting takes from the news that we're actually boiling up here. But can you give me any recent cool things that Firebelly has done here recently?
We are getting ready to relaunch a water company in Alaska, clearly Alaskan Glacial. So we've been doing a whole bunch of like branding kind of content for them, imagery and lifestyle stuff and motion graphics, baby. We're entering the world of motion graphics. So that's probably the newest and most cool thing.
Sweet. We probably want to talk to you about that, here in the future. All right. Well, that's a cool thing. And we always want to showcase what you guys are doing over there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome. Let's pivot around to our first article here. Just some topical news. And we always tee up a little bit of AI just because it's the coin of the realm here over at Search Engine Land from Danny Goodwin, who was just on the show here last week. Google hypes AI overviews, refuses to answer the CTR question. They also reported that AI overviews actually have 1.5 billion users, even though AI overviews are a default search feature. It's not a product. So Alphabet spent a lot of time on its Q1 2025 earnings call last week talking about the growth of AI overviews, but dodged a question seeking clarity on how Google's AI generated answers impact click-through rates and conversion. Just a side note, we were at SEO Week, the week before last, or was it last week? When did we go there? It was the week before last.
Yeah, it's a week and a half ago.
Week and a half ago.
We got back a week and a half
I'm
ago.
still lagged.
I know.
I don't know what's going on here. But I think the running conversation, Jacob, through all those 40 presentations was about AI and the loss of organic traffic.
Yeah.
And it's substantial and it's documented, and there's also a prognostication that's going to get worse and worse. Google is creating more and more elements on its own search result to keep those users there. And what Google's actually saying here in their quarterly report is that, hey, we have so much new traffic and new user interactions, but we also know that a lot of the AI overview results are self-referencing to other Google properties. So you want to beef up the user engagement, keep on looping back on yourself, and that will absolutely do it.
Nothing ever goes wrong with a copy of a copy of a copy.
I know that reference. That's a great Keaton film there. So there was a question that JP Morgan, an analyst for JP Morgan asked, can you just tell us about how we should think about the 1.5 billion AI overview users just in terms of breadth of rollout. And I know you're saying monetization at approximately the same rate, but how does that mean in terms of click-through rates and conversion? And Philip Schneider, Alphabet's Senior Vice President and Chief Business Officer, answered, I don't think this is the moment to go into the details of click-through rates and conversion and so on. Okay.
Well, of course not.
Wow.
I would love to see your face if I gave you that answer for something that you were waiting for. This is not the time, Erin, to talk about why something isn't working.
I would love to hear my kids say that. Yeah. I don't think it's the time to actually discuss taking out the trash.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a little bit of like mission ambiguity and like confusion. Like it's like, hey, I'm going to ignore the people that are paying me to focus on the audience that they're interested in.
Right. Absolutely. And on top of it, you know where that question came from, because there's a huge focus on the lack of click-through rates, the lack of destination websites. In fact, we referred to a research article from SE Ranking last week about how many citations were actually being generated by the different LLMs, and Google was not among the top. I mean, literally, ChatGPT was throwing out a heck of a lot more than overviews were actually giving. But check out that show and talk. We'll talk. We can. We'll actually have a show link in that for that. But the point being is that they're obviously avoiding the fact, and there is an incredible conversation right now about what's happening on the SERP, and with Google changing so much on the SERP to be able to self-reflect, there's a lot of commentary about what's actually happening to not only SEO, but just the experience on Google. Users want destinations. They just don't want an AI curation. They want to be able to experience websites. That's why they're there. Google's not the answer. Google is a roadmap, you know?
Yeah, it's beautifully put.
It's tough because that's the game that SEOs have, right? And we're forced to be playing in that space. But we talked prior show of diversification of digital marketing tactics to be able to move closer to where your users are. We highly recommend that from our client base, is to be able to reach them in LinkedIn or Reddit or other spaces in which they can have their authentic brand represented. You know, that's one of the toughest things, to break away from paid ads as well as search if you can't get connection to the users.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting opportunity. I love that you said a lot of brands aren't tall enough or big enough to ride this ride, because it's the opportunity around deep content.
Right.
And you've talked about that, for years. Deep content and wide content, right?
Absolutely.
The question I have for you is, does it have to be verifiable content?
Okay, you're just leading me into the stories here a little bit later on, but it should be verifiable. It should also have a level of consensus, because that's also what LLMs are processing on, is how many data points are actually aligned with everything else that's actually understanding about this topic, right? You don't have to fall in line completely, but you should know what you're writing and how consensus works in search. And unfortunately, there were some recent articles that just popped and released today from DOJ about some additional information on how Google processes ranking signals. I wasn't able to boil it into this show. We'll come back around to it next week. But there's a lot there, and we as SEOs have to understand how AI and how LLMs are actually processing information. So to the point, verifiable, yes, but you should strive as a brand to try to be one of those verification touch points in an industry or a topic ecosystem. That makes sense?
Yeah. And it also, I think, allows us to use different techniques to avoid perceptions of misinformation or impersonation, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Deep fakes.
Deep fakes, oh my Lord. Okay, well, there's more to get to on that, because we're going to talk about verification in a lot of spaces inside of social. Okay, another article from Search Engine Journal, and this is from Matt Southern. ChatGPT leads AI search race while Google and others slip. Data shows. Data from SimilarWeb, huge proponent of that platform. They provide a new insight into AI search market. ChatGPT now controls 80.1% of AI search traffic. Traditional search engines like Google show a consistent decline in usage. Wait, the previous conversation we just had was about 1.5 billion AI user searches for AI overviews, but evidently this is reporting something different. So SimilarWeb actually released this information. Over the last 6 months, OpenAI Tools has maintained a strong lead despite ups and downs. Meanwhile, traditional search engines are struggling to grow as AI tools reshape how people find information online. Another throwback to SEO Week. One of the things that were really striking here, we can't get ourselves completely in a kerfuffle about AI because it's still 3% of online user interaction. So in that AI user interaction, ChatGPT's got 80% of that, but it still does not hold a candle to the Google search interaction that is the goal for all online marketers. So we got to keep this in perspective. Duncan, what do you think about some of these stats that we're talking about? DeepSeek, 6.5% down from 7.6%. Google's AI tools, 5.6 up a smidge. Perplexity is 1.5, Grok 2.6. It's not a hugely growing interactive. They're just pivoting and are finding their place in this space.
Yeah, I mean, to take it to a old school social reference, I mean, MySpace did dominate all social in the early stages, right?
Yeah.
And so the question is, can OpenAI maintain its lead? And maybe some of the largest threats to ChatGPT are Facebook. Facebook. Like the massive capital expenditure, massive investments going on there. But I think you're right. I mean, although there are haters on LinkedIn that will tell us that we're not staying ahead if we're not using all the other AI platforms. Right. But the reality is ChatGPT is dominating. I mean, DeepSeek, what? Who?
Yeah, exactly.
And and Gemini is terrible.
Yeah, it truly is. They did actually, SimilarWeb did actually throw some information about the traditional search engine usage, and it's not growing, 2% down for Google year over year. Bing is actually down 18% year over year. Big drop from 18% in January. Yahoo's down 11% year over year. DuckDuckGo down 6%. Baidu's down 12%. So yeah, we're seeing what's happening here, but it's still, AI and LLM use is still less than 10% of the users that are online and interacting. We have to track it. We have to see this growth. And I think you're right. Facebook is probably going to tip the scale at some point in time with such a large user base.
Okay, and don't forget the Apple revelation from last week that Google AI is going to power Apple's AI capabilities.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, for the next OS. So,
really?
Yeah.
I did. So they've given up the ghost of actually building their own AI environment.
I think it's not ready.
Gotcha.
So I think that I mean, and also, hey, check it out. Google slips 2% with its search traffic,
right,
but increases 10% year over year with ad revenue.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a fascinating anomaly.
Yeah, and I mean, 2%, I mean, literally it's a drop in the bucket whenever you have that type of growth on the PPC side of things. And we also talked about this last week of PPC cost per click growth happening substantially year over year over year. All right, pivot around real quick. All right, I know we really haven't dialed this in for our shop on the show, but it is time. Now check this out. What does it take to make a good podcast? Is it a good idea? A good set of recording equipment? A want to share? Well, that's a start, but you have to have the strategy to be able to map out everything that you need from audio imagery, video assets, and the curation of everything that you record, making up that digital lake that you need. So we've been doing this a long time on our show for 13 years, but we've created a number of successful podcasts along the way. So we actually have an entire podcast creation methodology and strategy and series of tactics that we do. Edge Media Studios is poised to be able to help you in your podcast journey. Now, Edge Media Studios is a child of Cites Strategics, right? And we rebranded that expressly to be able to be found for podcast creation. We can give you a plan and a set of professional assets to be able to execute at a level that will give your listeners attention. Plus, we make it so easy, you don't have to worry about anything except the conversation that you're having. So check this site out. Go over to edgeofthewebradio.com/podcast to check out the media side of our organization, Edge Media Studios. Contact contact us for a free hour consultation, and we'll show you how we can help you with your current podcast. We have a few clients that just jumped on board that actually do have podcasts, and they're wanting to level up what they're doing. Or if you're starting something from scratch, we can certainly help and guide an entire strategy of where your users are and who the competition is.
Yeah.
You got to know that ecosystem. So we've got 13 years in the hopper of doing this, and we made all the mistakes so you don't have to. So go over to edgeofthewebradio.com/podcast and let us help guide you on your podcast evolution.
Not to mention that most podcasts fail in the first year.
Yeah.
So with Edge Media Studios, you are literally tripling your chances of success.
Absolutely.
And not falling by the wayside in the first year.
I appreciate that. Thank you,
yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
Been talking for a while. Like I said, we made so many mistakes along the way and learned from that. So
there's no better way to learn.
You can capitalize on that. All right. So that said, last point before we jump into social, U.S. Copyright Office cites legal risk at every stage of generative AI. This is from Roger Monti over at Search Engine Journal. All right. Just to put a pin in our AI discussion here, you got to check this article out. We'll have all the show notes in the show page as well as in our newsletter. The Copyright Office report raises legal concerns by identifying copyright risks at every step of generative AI training and development. So not to get too in the weeds from the detail of what we're talking about here, but the report states that many acts of data acquisition, the process of creating data sets from copyrighted work, and training could constitute prima facie infringement. It challenges the common industry defense that training models do not involve copying, noting that the process of creating data sets involves creation of multiple copies and improves in model weights can also contain copies of those works. The report also cites an instances where AI reproduces copyrighted works either word for word or near identical. So they're talking about not only the training process, it's also the copying process and the storing process of that content. Along with it, it's also pointing out the RAG, which is actually involving the reproduction of copyrighted works. RAG usually works in one or two ways, but in one, the AI developer copies material into a retrieval database. The generative AI system can later access that database to retrieve relevant material and supply. So we talked before show about that process. Where does the user or the producer get a vote into how you're going to use this content, especially if there's a piece of content or series of pieces that are continually being updated? Because if it curates that content and now it's 6 months old, and the content that I'm writing it's not only evergreen, but it's also continually being updated, you're actually presenting content that is separated from the true fact and the topical interest that particular concept may constitute. So as these training modules are going through, you're not getting anywhere where you can actually help guide that training model. It's taking a copy, it's inferring what it wants to infer from that, and keep on moving on. I think what we're seeing here with the Copyright Office, we're seeing the beginning of how to position around this new environment, and you're seeing more and more legal positioning, more and more cases that are coming to the fray to be able to push back on what OpenAI and all the LLMs have really taken for granted. There's a big lead in. Duncan, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, it's fascinating, the conversations around derivative work, around integrative work, and around transformative efforts, right? And so I think the argument to position AI in the same model as human learning, I think will not stand up in courts of law. And this report that you've referred to, I think itself will not stand up, but it'll be a valuable resource, right? So I think that the creator economy, any kind of creator, right? The creator economy is in serious jeopardy. Right. And whether people realize it or not, because they're trying to make a living, right? And so I think that that's what we're talking about. Stakes are high.
They really are. And I mean, it's at the core of this is that if these AI models are actually training on that creator content, not giving the citation, not giving the value of how it positions that information, we're talking about links or one way, shape, or form to be able to get that traffic back over to the source of the information. These things are running rogue, and legal's finally catching up to it. And with governmental organizations such as the U.S. Copyright Office, I think you're going to be seeing more and more legislation moving into place to be able to counterbalance what has been poached and continually being poached from user-generated content and produced content, you know?
Yeah, I think that we can agree that nobody is safe.
No, you're right. You're right. All right, pivot around to social media news, and thanks for kind of walking through some of the topical stuff here.
Love it.
Diving into social media. That's why we have Duncan on the shows, to be able to unpack lots of things that are happening on a lot of different platforms. First, we're going to take a stab at Meta's moving pretty darn quickly on a number of different fronts. So check this out. Meta, this is an article from TechCrunch from Aisha Malik. They just posted this back last week or the week before. Meta releases its CapCut rival Edits globally. Meta actually announced on Tuesday that it's officially launching Edits. It's CapCut-like, and that's from TikTok, right? It's a video creation app releasing globally. Edits will allow creators to do things like keep track of video ideas, get inspiration for new content, and create videos with effects and AI tools. The app is available on iOS and Android. So we also know that the ByteDance-owned CapCut and TikTok were pulled off of the App Store whenever the ban went in place, and Trump gave a 75-day allowance for the platform still to operate in the U.S. while they're still seeking for a U.S. buyer. We'll talk about it a little bit here. But from an opportunity standpoint, right, part of their communication to users about this tool is not only can this be used in Meta or Instagram and another different platforms and Facebook, but they also say it can be used for any platform, was likely a reference to its competitors like TikTok. So you can very well edit your video and push it into TikTok, right?
I mean, I think that's that's a beautiful definition of the MO that Meta takes. It's like it doesn't necessarily strive for originality. It strives for competitive weaknesses that it can overcome, and they can afford to give it away for free, right? So it's like, hey, you could get edits for free. It's got a whole methodology and a workflow. It doesn't have some of the limitations that CapCut has. And I love the point you made about cross-platform creation. So you're not just limited now to creating in a Meta tool for Meta,
right,
Facebook and Instagram and Threads, but now you're looking at YouTube and TikTok, right? So and especially YouTube Shorts, I think.
Absolutely. It's built for that, yeah.
I mean, it seems like it is inherently poised. Whether or not TikTok goes away, it is still a very, very viable tool at the cost of free.
At the cost of free. Well, I mean, obviously, if you're not paying for it, you are the product, right? So the user being able to use this tool, you're certainly going to have preferential integration with Instagram and Facebook feeds as well.
But I mean, you got to wonder what the monitoring of the usage of the tool is, as you inferred.
Yeah.
Because especially when Meta's making massive investments into AI, I think the creative process is being studied.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Something to also pay attention to on the Meta front, they just rolled out ads globally on the Threads feed. Another article, this is from April 24th from Anu Adegbola over at Search Engine Land. Meta's text-based social platform is now monetizing 300 million monthly active users. Their standalone app Threads is beginning a global rollout of advertisements within its feed starting last Wednesday or Wednesday before. So we're about 2 weeks behind, expanding the limited testing that actually began in January. So what's happening? Image-based ads will appear. Nothing's safe, by the way, right? Nothing's safe from monetization, but we also know that because we are the product, right?
Yeah.
All eligible advertisers will gain access to the Meta's inventory filler. Ad placement on Threads will be a default for new campaigns using Advantage Plus or manual placements, and advertisers can opt out through manual placement settings. So now we have another, and we talked about this a little while ago. We knew it was coming, but now there's an entire ad channel for your brand, or clients that you represent to be able to move them into Threads. What's your take on this?
I mean, it's an interesting expansion of the audience and where you're meeting them in their journey, right? So 320 million users, who knows what the daily average usage is, but it's certainly a compelling number.
It is.
When you think about they only launched, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that, and X has grown to 600 million users. However, brands are not that fond of X as they used to be.
No.
Right? And Bluesky, although it is increasing in its usage, is still around 35 million people.
Wow.
So maybe a very focused audience, but I think Threads is a credible threat.
Yep.
So, but the question is that who are these 320 million people?
Right.
So
What's the active user, monthly user interaction there? That's what we really want to know. But this is also another capitalization on the opportunity, because we also knew that whenever the ban went in place on TikTok, there was an exodus of advertisers, and they did not all come back because of the riskiness of being on that platform and the commitment of not only the capital for advertising, but also losing the potential user base. Well, here's another opportunity that Meta's jumping in there going, oh, well, we got something over here that you might want to interact with, right? So they're watching very carefully and seeing the political ecosystem as well as the entire space of user interaction, and they're paying attention and they're jumping in there.
I mean, it's certainly, when you talk about Bluesky, right? It's like it's certainly a very stark contrast between the way the content is being presented.
Right.
I think that the X model is, hey, anything goes, and the Threads model is probably following that, where Bluesky is leaning in the total opposite direction.
Right.
So,
it's a bit more of a safer environment. It's not nearly as contentious as what X has turned out to be.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't stand the number of ads I'm seeing in every post on X. I mean, literally, anywhere that there's like 3 comments on a particular post, I'm seeing an ad. It's like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
Get off my lawn. I mean, I can understand major channels, but if I'm watching one person with 4 comments and there's an ad, they're just gratuitous. They're putting it everywhere. All right. So speaking of ads, another point about Meta over at Search Engine Land from Anu as well. Meta also adds dynamic overlays to Advantage Plus catalog ads. Now check this out. They've actually introduced a small but potentially powerful tool in its Advantage Plus catalog campaign for these dynamic overlays. Check it out. Advertisers can now add price, discount, shipping labels directly onto product images styled like stickers to be able to make promotion pop in the Facebook feed. So they've got 4 label options: current price, a strike-through sale price, percentage off, and free shipping. You can turn each on or off style how you want, or let Meta choose what performs best. Each overlay can actually be toggled on and off, and you can customize the look, or, like we said, let Meta decide. I hate taking my hand off the wheel when it comes down to advertising.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing. I think it's aimed at the larger opportunity of small business, where they can't afford an ad specialist, right?
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, any Facebook ad specialist or Instagram ad specialist is going to tell you that the AI-driven ads and the dynamic stuff that is being pushed onto the less sophisticated user also doesn't perform as well.
Right.
I mean, I know that's highly subjective, but interesting perspective anyway.
Absolutely. All right, so are we done with Meta? I think so, but maybe not. But let's pause for a minute and just give a shout out to one of our ongoing long-term sponsors. That's InLinks. They're been a long-term sponsor for Edge of the Web. They now have a new offering. I'll show this to you after the show. Ykai.io. What AI knows about you. Are you keeping up with what AI knows about you or your company? Now you can actually stay on top of the facts with Ykai. This is a powerful tool that helps you discover exactly how AI thinks about your brand and talks about it to key customers and gives you ways to be able to improvement. You can actually get a benchmark of your AI presence against your competitors, reveal key content opportunities, and flag harmful link hallucinations. That's a thing, all in one report. So check that out. It's easy to use. It's a fact-checking tool as well that keeps you in the know, ensuring your brand's online narrative is flourishing. I've been using this for a couple of months. In fact, I just talked to Dixon this morning before the show, just unpacking the tool set, and also I know a little bit more about what's going to be coming down the pike. So check out Ykai.io. Go over to edgeofthewebradio.com/WAIKAY. We've got a offer that's going to be pretty cool for you guys. We're going to be giving some free credits if you sign up through our form that goes over to Ykai. You can actually use their free tool, but we also have a little bit that we can give you to get some topical reports as well. And stay tuned and watch the show notes, because we're going to be populating that to this show as well as the future shows. All right, finishing up our social media news. Well, we got a few here.
Yeah.
Tell me about Bluesky. A new form of verification that's on Bluesky. And for those of you who have not interacted with Bluesky, it's a cool environment. It's not nearly as heinous as the Twitter feed that's there, right? There was a mass exodus from Twitter whenever everything came to fruition and Trump was allowed back in. But there's a level of verification that's actually really interesting. Give me an idea of what we're talking about here.
I mean, I think we're looking at a very compelling alternate model where we're looking at sort of this collective of highly credible partners or sources that are assisting with the verification. I know the New York Times is one of them.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that they can actually issue a blue check mark. And I think it's a direct reaction to deep fakes, to impersonation, to misinformation. And candidly, I think also kind of the rank, kind of not malice, but malicious behavior on some of these social platforms. It's almost like Pinterest. It's a happier place. So,
because we also know that Twitter kind of sold its verification out whenever they allowed everybody to just buy a blue check, right?
Yeah, I bought the blue check. It didn't do anything for me.
No,
so I just that was $8 a month that was wasted.
I agree with you completely. Although they keep on nudging me, going, "Hey, you could do this if you got your blue check back." I didn't like it. I mean, what was the value of that? But to the point, in Bluesky they are introducing trusted verifiers. These blue checks can actually be issued by platforms, and they're just one form of trust. But trust doesn't come only from the top down. It emerges from relationships, communities, and shared content, says their Bluesky post there. So, like you said, New York Times can actually bestow verification on their journalists, right? So what is happening now, you're getting user participation in this space where it was all coming from the top down, and on top of that, got to put a coin in the slot to be able to get that. We now have an environment where user participation's now be able to push back on spam and be able to have much more of a trusted network of connections as opposed to the other way around.
I mean, it's like a modern take on old school being connected to highly authoritative sites, right? It's like you are who you are connected to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's a really interesting play.
We're going to go down this lane a little bit more. Check this out. Is that over on Facebook, they have actually released a particular brief here back on the 24th of April. They're cracking down on spammy content on Facebook. This comes from the source itself. They say they've heard you. Facebook feed doesn't always serve up fresh, engaging posts that you consistently enjoy. In fact, we've all seen a number of spammy posts. Well, they've recently introduced a new Friends tab in the US to be able to help bring back the OG Facebook experience. Now they're listening and they're launching an initiative to further crack down on spammy content. Some accounts try to game Facebook algorithms and to increase the views, reach a higher follow count, and this, that, and the other. So they're actually pointing out a few specifics, like lowering the reach of accounts that are sharing spammy content. Here's a perfect picture of a dog, a retriever, right? We're all sucker for a dog pic. But in the middle of that is some gratuitous top 10 airplane facts. Here are some interesting facts about airplanes. What in the world does that have to do with that bloody photo? Nothing whatsoever. So they're pinning down focused accounts that engage with these tactics, and they'll only have their content shown to followers and not be eligible for any type of monetization.
I mean, it's worked on Reddit, right? I mean, I think that the downvote has its place. I mean, can it be manipulated and used for the wrong purposes? Sure, but I mean, a knife can be used to cut bread or kill someone. So I think that I'm all for the downvote.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing, is that the downvote, skipping over to that, they're investing more to remove counts, coordinate fake engagement, but check this out. You're right. And on screen, if I can ask Jacob to throw that up, that's right underneath the investing more to remove. Spam networks coordinate fake engagement are unfortunately a reality, says Facebook. Well, what they're doing, check this out. In 2024, they took down more than 100 million fake pages engaging in scripted follows abuse on Facebook. Along with the efforts, they're also exploring ways to elevate more meaningful and engaging discussions. For example, they're testing a comments feature. This is what you're speaking of. So people can actually signal the ones that are irrelevant and don't fit the spirit of the conversation. And there's your downvote.
Yeah.
We've not seen that before in Facebook, and they're experimenting with this. So you can literally start voting down comments that are going to be spam in a particular conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And boy, that's the Reddit lane right there. But on top of it, this is what we're talking about. These tech giants are using the true users to help clear out and engage and be participatory on the evaluation of content. We're seeing that coming through in a lot of different platforms. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I think, again, any of this can be used for the wrong purpose, but I think that the general belief in the power of good in people is, I think, where it's aimed, which is weird that, a platform like Facebook would act on that, but let's hope for the best.
Let's hope for the best. Nice little segue.
Are we concerned about that getting abused?
Oh, yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah.
I would. I'd be incredibly concerned about that, because what does that have to do with my organic post on something, especially if we're commenting on something and I'm making a reference to something that's tangential but still appropriate to the commentary, right? And all of a sudden, boop, 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 I'm getting downvoted here. What ramifications does that have to me as a user in Facebook for my next comments on another thread, right?
That, and if people are engaging in bad practices, downvoting things that they really shouldn't be,
right?
Are they looking for that, and are they trying to limit those people's impact?
Exactly.
I would hope so, but
it's going to be a dampening factor, and then you'd hope that Facebook monitors that downvoters usage.
Right.
And if they're so abusing that button, they take it away from them.
Either take it away or just make it worth, 0.01% when everyone else is worth 1.
Yep.
Oh, that's a fascinating idea, Jacob. The as opposed to a record of what you voted on or downvoted on, it's more weighting that's assigned to you based on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's when you're seeing an evolution of these type of tools. They have to think through. I mean, very similar to what Google Business Profile was allowing for users to move a pin on a map. Any user could actually move a location into the middle of the Atlantic Sea of a business, right? And a lot of times they lose all of their reviews if the owner of that business moved it back. How in the world that it was actually allowed to get through yeah, exactly.
Not to mention the tracking, right?
Oh, yeah.
And saying that, hey, from an ads targeting standpoint, I want to target not just positive or reality-based attributes, but also negative attributes. Like, this person is likely to buy this car, but also downvote this kind of content, right?
Yep.
So,
Lord. So you might actually open up a Pandora's box.
Multi-dimensional.
All right. Speaking of multidimensional, or maybe sometimes just one dimension, from social media today, Andrew Hutchinson talks about Trump, and he's saying he may extend TikTok sell-off deadline once again. So this can't be good for the brand of TikTok if they're trying to find an actual U.S. buyer. Quick update on this saga. The app is still technically banned in the U.S. based on the Senate-approved sell-off bill that went into effect January 19th. But even so, TikTok is still operating as normal for Americans due to the stay of execution from U.S. President Donald Trump, while Trump also remains hopeful of finding an alternative to keep TikTok available to the nation, right? So there was an extended 75-day extended bypass of that ban, and now there's another bypass that's happening right now. So he's going to be extending it all the way into, I believe, June. After various failed legal challenges, the bill officially went into effect on January 19th, like we talked about, which gave until April of this year to establish a sell-off arrangement. There's been rumors of a number of different organizations, including Amazon, as well as Perplexity, possibly vying for the buy-off of that, but it still hasn't happened. So still looking for a viable partner, and Trump is really probably trying to protect his own brand, because you have a lot of TikTok users that are just going to be with pitchforks if this thing disappears.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the potential threat here is congressional action, right?
Right.
It's like, so what happens if Congress does what Congress can do?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the, well, how do you say, the risk or the...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So enough about Trump, but it does affect, and this is what we talked about, Jacob, a while back, is you're doing the hokey pokey with TikTok, right? And every step they take back in, you're losing advertisers, because advertisers are not going to bet on a risky platform. They're just moving away.
Yeah.
And that's what Meta just capitalized on with ads inside of threads. So you're really screwing up with the revenue, immediate short-term revenue growth for TikTok, but even long-term scenarios because of it's a hot potato that's happening right now. I don't know how many mixed metaphors I could throw in there.
You have the best sayings.
Do you guys want to put on your tinfoil hats for a minute?
Go for it.
All right. I think that TikTok hasn't been purchased yet because everyone who's bidding is hoping that it's going to be undervalued because of, well, you have to sell because if you don't, you're going to be gone. So wouldn't you rather sell for a cheap price? So if you want to
squeeze out all the advertisers,
worth $100, but it's about to be trashed. I'll be like, I'll give you $50.
Yeah.
And then, well, the second tinfoil hat on top of the first.
Wow.
With the extensions and everything else, do you think that the advertisers leaving is causing the value of TikTok to go down? I would think it could spring back if it, if someone bought it and they did well with it.
Sure.
But every time advertisers leave, then they have less revenue to show the potential buyers, and so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, I'd agree.
And it's dropping in value.
I mean, it could be an ego-based purchase at a ridiculous price.
Right.
I mean, we also have to look at what a core part of Oracle's business TikTok is. So will there be a coalition of buyers that come together to protect their own interests?
Oh, wow.
Tin hats.
How many tin hats are?
I got them all.
That's tin hatception right there. Okay. Shifting over to more of a stable platform to finish out our social news here. Pinterest launches some new tools to be able to fight AI slop. This is from TechCrunch, from Sarah Perez. Pinterest says it's finally going to do something about all the AI slop that's taken over its platform. After increasing volume of complaints, the social networking and image pinboard site announced Wednesday a plan to be able to begin labeling AI-generated and AI-modified images. Thank God.
Yeah.
It will also introduce a new option that allows users to reduce the number of generative AI pins that they see. I love that. So not only is it actually analyzing images, and they've got some core functionality to be able to see whether or not it's human-made content, they also are analyzing the users, and they're making it possible for users to be able to push back on these bad actors. I just like the fact that there's a button that I can push that I don't want to see AI-generated images. I want to see real images. And that's that other, what we're talking about this entire show is user-generated content or user engagement in the platform. Platforms are finally asking users, tell us if you really like this or not, right?
I mean, what a concept.
I know.
The audience matters. It's almost like we're finally these tech giants are finally realizing that their audience needs to be happy or they will go elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Right. And Pinterest has always been kind of a positive place.
Right.
They encourage referral traffic.
Yep.
In fact, they reward referral traffic. And so I think that, we've been telling our clients for years, you got to have a presence on Pinterest. Mm-hmm. But it comes back to the big boy or big girl. You're not tall enough to ride this ride. And so Pinterest is easy to scratch, but it's a very, very stable place. It's content friendly. And I'm glad to see it doing things to protect its audience. And also, we talked about this last time, the Pinterest Predicts report is usually way ahead of all trends.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Because they look at almost 1 billion mentions and like data points to say this is what's happening. Everything from what color is going to trend, which dogs are going to trend, which type of music is going to trend. So it's fascinating.
It really is.
Yay, Pinterest.
Yay, yeah. And we're seeing a lot of just the platforms reaching out to the user base. Last one here on the list to be able to finish this out. Reddit looks to add human checks to weed out AI profiles. Say it ain't so. Reddit's actually looking to take more action to clarify the humanity of its users after the backlash over a recent AI experiment that is unwittingly played out on Reddit users. Last month, 404 Media reported that a team of researchers from University of Zurich had run a live test of AI bot profiles on Reddit to see whether or not those bots could sway people's opinions, certain divisive topics, and they could, per the official report. Notably, all of our treatments surpass human performance substantially, achieving persuasive rates between 3 to 6 times higher than the human baseline. All right, wrap all that up. There was an experiment using Reddit with AI profiles that were meant to help persuade to a particular interest how many people that they were actually affecting in these different subreddits, and they were able to do it 3 to 6 times more than the human baseline of interaction on a particular subreddit. That's scary.
That's scary.
That's weaponization of AI bots in what's expected to be a human environment where you're participating with these upvotes or downvotes. And there was a huge backlash on this. So what Reddit's doing here, they were so rightfully angry that they've been manipulated. There were no indications that they were interacting with bots whatsoever. So Reddit is looking to rectify this. As per a community update shared by the Reddit CEO, Steve Huffman, the company will soon seek to add in new qualifiers to prove that users are indeed human beings. It could be as little as just check this box and do you see a bust in the pictures? Who knows, right? But he says no solution is perfect, including the status quo, but we will do our best to preserve both humanness and anonymity of Reddit. We'll share more as we go. Now check this out. We know that Reddit's coming up in SERP all the time. And we also know that there's a lot of garbage that's coming up in the SERP from these Reddit listings. And literally Ray is always out there showing, are you serious? Is that literally you see one of the top qualifying blue links is a Reddit that was completely manipulated and just a piece of garbage here. So what you're seeing here is Reddit and the inclusion into the SERP. You now have a scenario where there can be a lot of consensus change with bots that could very well change how the search is evaluating a particular concept, right? And how it looks at either consensus or a consensus plus outlying opinions. It always makes that judgment as it's building the SERP page. Now you also have a real experiment where it affected users' opinions, and that ripple effect can actually change the SERP on Google itself because they are so intertwined. Sorry, there's the fourth tinfoil hat for the day here.
But it makes sense, though. I think Reddit is under more pressure than Meta.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much pressure as X, but it's definitely under a lot of pressure to continually prove its credibility, its business model, and its ability to monetize.
Right.
And we were talking in the pre-show, the Reddit audience is both the most beautiful and ugly thing about Reddit. And so protecting the humanity, it was a theme here, right? It's like, hey, humanity matters, and we're correcting the runaway car or runaway train, Soul Asylum.
Yep.
Runaway train of AI, right? It's like there are, and let the audience protect itself. And I think Reddit remains a inherently pure place that way.
I would agree. That and Quora. And we do recommend our brands start creating their brand profile and user profiles inside of Reddit, but never game the system, obviously, but never also pitch your services. You've got to be part of the community.
Correct.
There, and you have to engage. And if you are asked to be subject matter expert, then you can actually move into that space where it may be an opportunity to be able to make a sale or a lead, but you've got to be authentic or you'll be burnt to the ground in these different subreddits. And I think this is derivative of that. You've got different platforms that the users are more champion of, right? Facebook is not a space where you've got a huge amount of pushback because it's just, and demographics have shifted, but a Reddit environment is a much more dedicated and loyal space. And you start pushing into AI manipulation and they will chop your hand off.
I mean, but the theme is interesting, right? It's like human verification, collective verification.
Yep.
So I think that is interesting that definitely the Wild West is being addressed a little bit.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Very good. That's the last article for this show. Duncan, any final thoughts on what you're seeing here from, hey, I think you kind of gave a summary here. We're talking about big tech giants really relying on the users to be able to help counterbalance this wave after wave of AI. Any other thoughts that you have there?
I mean, I think that Reddit and Pinterest and even LinkedIn are using their audience because they don't have, maybe they don't have the initiative that Meta has to put 60 billion into infrastructure and capital expenditures and the wearables and the metaverse and all of that stuff. So I think they're using the tools and the resources that they have, which, you know, happen to be great. So I think Meta is just in a different place where they can do both.
Amen to that.
So
Talking about user behavior and be able to understand user behavior, just to make a quick plug for a recent show that we did. Celeste Gonzalez actually jumped in and talked about heat map tracking and understanding user behavior on your site. As a brand, you have to pay attention to your own user base and what they're really voting for. Look, using Clarity and using Hotjar and be able to see angry clicks and dead clicks and things like that. Those are things that you have to get right to be able to give a good user experience. So you may not be a big tech platform, but if you're not paying attention to your audience interacts and votes for you during the micro decisions of clicks, right? Yeah. So pay attention to what your users are doing, and Clarity is for free. Check it out, launch it on your website, and see what is actually going on there.
And I think there's no such pushback as we're not big enough to do that. Right. Anyone can do it, and they should.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
very good. Duncan, thanks so much for your time today. We always appreciate you coming in. Really do appreciate it. And kudos to Firebelly and their new wins here with the recent client. Certainly going to have you back here in a few weeks to talk more about social. I appreciate everything that you give to our audience here. How can they find you? How can they track you down?
Firebellymarketing.com. Firebelly Marketing, or we are Firebelly on most social platforms. Cool. Also, we have a podcast that focuses on founders of food and beverage brands. And also, last but not least, a shout out to Reagan Heron, my producer, who put all the content together. And,
we really appreciate that.
Made sure that I learned it, including arriving on time. Thank you, Reagan.
I need a Reagan in my life.
I'm telling you.
All right. Thanks for everybody listening here. Make sure you comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel as we push this content out into the video space as well. Go over to Edge of the Web Radio to make sure that you check out the recent shows that we've done. And if you could, give us a rating here. Give us a 5-star. Give Duncan a 5-star, for God's sake. He needs it.
I'll take a 4.5.
But that's how we actually get in front of new listeners. And you remember, you used to be one once. So from all of us over the edge, stay safe, stay well, and do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.